is now my privilege to introduce the Reverend Austin Rammel from Venture Church, Dallas, for this very important part of the program. He has graciously accepted my invitation to deliver the charge to the Gaston County elected officials. Reverend Rammel, will you please do us the honor?
Thanks, Tracy. And I really am honored to do this, and I understand the responsibility in it. You guys that just were sworn in and those who are already serving, we have a common thread in what you're doing and what myself and Dickie and Pastor are doing. We're shepherding a community. And when you think about shepherding, we all kind of have this romantic concept. You know, you see this beautiful picture with a person with a staff and they're out there in these green pastures and you have this real kind of high esteem of that position. But that's actually not a historically correct view of how shepherds were viewed. Larry Osborne, who's a noted leadership author, he wrote in his book, Lead Like a Shepherd. He said, if you had a lot of sheep and no sons, you hired someone to do the job. But good help's hard to come by. Shepherding was a low-paying, low-prestige, transient occupation filled by those on the fringes of society. Sounds like politicians, right? Hirelings were notoriously undependable. They were known to bail at the first sign of trouble or danger. They were considered so untrustworthy, they were not allowed to testify in a court of law. So don't be fooled by the fact that so many biblical heroes were once shepherds. That didn't impress the Jews of Jesus' day enough to view shepherding as a noble profession. But it did cause them to marvel at God's propensity to choose and bless the most unlikely of people, including shepherds like Abraham, Jacob, Moses, David, and Amos, to name a few. So we live in a climate, whether we really like it or not, we live in a climate where the reality is, when we think about political officials and offices, the tendency of our communities and citizens is to think of them with a measure of skepticism. The old jokes of the lawyer jokes, and the used car jokes have now become the jokes of those who've been elected into offices. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. Because our community needs to have the highest respect for these positions and the people that are in them. And so maybe the perception of shepherds is what led the Apostle Peter to write this. He wrote to a bunch of churches in the area of Turkey. You know where Turkey is on the map. And he wrote to these churches like Galatia and other places. And this is what he said to the shepherds of those churches. He said, so I exhort the elders among you, those who are leaders, as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ. I love that Peter's saying, listen, I saw Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. I believe in it just like you. He said, as well as the partakers in the glory that is going to be revealed. So he starts with this commonality. We have something in common, he says to these guys. We all believe that Christ died on the cross. We all believe that he rose again. We all believe that we find life in our faith and surrender to him. And the glory that is in him and his return is the glory that we have because we've submitted our lives in belief to this Jesus who we believe is God. We share that together. As those of you who are being elected, we share a common belief in our country, in our citizenship, in our rights and privileges here to be defended. So we have something we share. And so he said to them, shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being an example to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you'll receive an unfading crown of glory. So let me give you 4 charges from that passage, all right, real quick. Number 1, don't get caught up in the nonsense. Stay above it. Don't get caught up in the nonsense and the chatter. Stay above it. He says, be examples to the flock. All too often, people are fussing over which sheep stepped on a blade of grass and forget that the job of the shepherd is to lead the sheep to eat the blades of grass. Stay out of the nonsense. People who get caught up in the nonsense are people who are trying to swim across a lake underwater. You're either going to drown, or when you finally pop up, you're not going to be where you thought you were. So stay out of the nonsense and be an example to a society that's getting caught up in constant hysteria and constant extremities. The second charge I give you, don't get caught up in the nonsense, stay above it. Second, don't settle for the status quo. Challenging. You were not elected to lead us to complacency. You were not elected to lead Gaston County in the place that it was. Shepherds were hired to make the sheep fat, woollier, and healthier. If they brought the sheep back the same way that they left the sheep when they left from the original owner, they got fired. Jesus actually told a parable one time. And in this parable, he talked about people getting talents. And some were given a little bit more than others. There was one fellow who only got one talent. And he thought he was going to be real smart. And he was going to dig a hole and put that talent in there. And when the master came back, he was going to be all proud and show him that he had things just like they were left when he went away. And to his shock, he was cast into outer darkness for leaving things as they were when he got there. Your job is to lead. Peter said to them, exercise oversight. That's leadership. And leadership is moving people from where they are to a better place. I have 3 kids, and I want those children to have a place to live and grow up in that's more prosperous and has more opportunities than what I received. Lead us there. Number 3, don't get caught up in the nonsense, stay above it. Don't settle for the status quo, challenge it. And don't forget you're a sheep. Get wise counsel. He says, don't dominate over those in your charge. And the reason why I told him that is, they're sheep just like you. I'm not a dog up here barking at you. I'm a sheep baaing at you. We're all sheep. I don't know if you ever watch the cartoon Shaun the Sheep. Shaun the Sheep, he's a sheep. And he got the job as the leader of the sheep, not because he wasn't a sheep. He's just a little smarter than the other sheep. He's a little wiser than the other sheep. But he's still a sheep. He gets up in the morning and baas like the rest of them. If you know anything about sheep, it's one of these things when Jesus is talking about us being sheep. Everybody, oh, that's cute and that's cuddly. But sheep are actually pretty dumb animals. As a whole, they're not real smart. Sheep will actually die of dehydration if they are not given still water. Some of you maybe have been to a funeral and you heard a preacher read Psalm 23. Leads me beside still waters. And we go, oh, that sounds so nice. Well, that's actually really important because if a sheep walks up to a little creek or a little brook that's flowing with swift water, they're so scared of that 2 or 3 inches of swift water, they'll jump over that brook. They won't touch it at all, nor will they even drink the water. And so a shepherd literally has to create a dam to still the water so the sheep won't die of dehydration. So when the Bible calls a sheep, that's not actually something that's an affirmation. That's actually a statement of our need for the shepherd. And the church would say amen, right? So we need ourselves to be informed. The Bible speaks of having many wise counselors. The book of James talks about what a wise counselor is. I charge you to find wise counselors, plural. People that don't agree with you. People that see things differently than you do. People that are willing to challenge you and aren't sitting there awed by who you are, but love you enough to challenge you even if you don't like it. Love you enough to say things to you that you may not agree with. Love you enough to give you a different perspective. And people that you know can see the things that you don't. We all have blinders on. We're all narrow-minded. We're all biased. We're born that way. We can't help it. It's always funny when I hear people say, I'm not biased. That's ridiculous. We all are. Surround yourself with wise counselors. And remember, when you get up in the morning, you don't bark as a sheepdog. You're a sheep. Number 4, last one. Don't disregard the judgment of God. Check your heart. We often think that one day we're going to stand before God and give an account for what we've done, and we will. But we're also going to give an account for why we did it. The Apostle Peter said, and when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive an unfading crown of glory. But listen to some other scriptures. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 2. Every way of man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. Jeremiah 17:10. I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. Revelation chapter 2, verse 23. And all the churches will know that I am he who searches mind and heart, and I will give each one according to your own works. So don't get caught up in the nonsense. Stay above it. Don't settle for the status quo. Challenge it. Don't forget you're a sheep. Get wise counsel. And don't disregard the judgment of God. Check your heart. To put it all together, let me read one last quote from you. There's a man named Patrick Lencioni. He's a noted leadership author, and he wrote a book called The Motive. I would encourage every person in this room who's in leadership to get that book. It's called The Motive. One of the most profound books on leadership I've ever read. And Patrick Lencioni said, I wish I'd have wrote that book first, and it wasn't just a marketing tool. If you actually read it, you realize why. But listen to what he said. I'm going to close with this. I believe it's long past time that we as individuals and a society reestablish the standard of leadership, that the standard of leadership can never be about the leader more than the led. Most leaders today don't generally see the role as a privilege or a duty. They see it as a right or a reward. At the most fundamental level, there are only two motives that drive people to become a leader. First, they want to serve others, to do whatever is necessary to bring about something good for the people they lead. They understand that sacrifice and suffering are inevitable in this pursuit, and that serving others is the only valid motivation for leadership. This is why it annoys me when people praise someone for being a servant leader, as though there is any other valid option. The second basic reason why people choose to be a leader, the all too common but invalid one, is that they want to be rewarded. They see leadership as the prize for years of hard work and are drawn by its trappings: attention, status, power, money. Most people understand intuitively that this is a terrible reason to become a leader, but it's important to identify specifically and tangibly why this is such a problem. When leaders are motivated by personal reward, they will avoid the unpleasant situations and activities that leadership requires. They will calculate the personal economics of uncomfortable and tedious responsibilities that only a leader can do, and try to avoid them. This inevitably leads people in their charge without direction, guidance, and protection, which eventually hurts these people and the organization as a whole. In other words, they lack the job of a shepherd. So I charge you, be the first kind of leader. The one who takes it as a responsibility. And the one who takes it as a challenge, willing to give their life as Christ has given His life for us. I charge you to be that kind of leader. And I thank you that I believe every one of you are. And I want you to know, myself and Dickie, and I'm sure you as well, we absolutely understand what it means to lead and the sacrifices involved and how hard it is on your families, how much time it takes. I know for some of you it probably costs you more money to serve in this capacity than you'll ever make out of it. So we get it, and we want to be able to serve you. And so just know, as a pastor, and I'm sure I speak for the rest of these guys, our church and my family, if there's ever anything that we can do for you, it's an honor to serve those whom we know are giving so much of themselves to serve us and make this a place for me and my family and my children to grow up and prosper in. So thank you so much, and please don't ever hesitate to let me know.